we need to talk a little bit about the conflict in the Middle East. I've been wanting to kind of avoid this as a topic, but I think we're at that stage now where we have to talk about it because we saw quite a significant escalation last night with Iran firing 200 missiles into Israel. And with that escalation, there are risks and there will be a negative impact if things escalate even further on our livelihood here in the UK. And I'm also a little bit mindful that I don't want to be nonchalant, disrespectful, or maybe a little bit crass in discussing this because the reality is there's a conflict going on, people die in conflicts, and it's very easy for me in the comfort of my own home and you to watch this in the comfort of your own home to start to talk about these things that could impact our livelihood that in the bigger scheme of conflicts is a non-issue, right? So I want to be a little bit respectful around that, but I do think it's something that we should talk about purely because of where we've been as a nation over the past 2, 3 years, battling energy prices, battling inflation, battling high interest rates. All of those things potentially become a really big problem if things start to escalate even further in the Middle East. And the hope is that it doesn't. But last night was a pretty big tipping scale. And reading some of the news and some of the commentary that's coming out, you would be amiss if you were not pessimistic that things would get better. Now, obviously, this all started with an horrendous thing that Hamas did with Israel. But from where we are now to how it started seemed like a really big leap. And this will impact us. And the first thing to talk about will be inflation. I'm going to reference some of the notes that I've made for this. Now, why would a conflict in the Middle East impact inflation here in the UK? Well, as the conflict intensifies in that part of the world, it is very, very likely that there could be a significant component of how we measure inflation impacted by way of energy prices. Now, it's interesting because Iran is one of the big oil and energy suppliers, suppliers in the world. Yes, a lot of their oil and energy is under international sanction right now, but nonetheless, you would be a fool to think that Iranian energy didn't end up on the wholesale market in some way, shape, or form. There are all kinds of, workarounds that these countries can basically use. And I think when we look at energy costs specifically, anything that impacts supply chains, anything that impacts the region where it's obviously an oil-rich region, that potentially filters down to us. Now, when we look at inflation, inflation is the increase of goods and services around us, right? If energy prices were to be impacted because of supply chain issues, because of this war, ships having to be rerouted, that cost goes up. That cost will then be passed on to us as people. Now, that in itself is inflationary. And if you've been following us on this channel, you've been tuning into the content, we know that inflation is very closely linked to monetary policy, interest rates, mortgage rates. It's like a little spider's web, essentially. Now, just yesterday, we saw the energy price cap increase here in the UK. And the question was, well, if energy prices have started coming down, why is ours increased even further? That's due to a number of reasons. One of them is the fact that we don't really have the ability to store energy like most countries do. Now, if this were to escalate in the Middle East with supply chain issues, potential shipments being rerouted, the cost of actually getting energy on the market increasing, this is going to be an inflationary issue. And that leads directly to interest rates. We have just got to a point where we seem to have a track where interest rates are coming down. Remember, the highest our interest rates got was 11.1%. I believe that was in November of 2023. 11.1%. At this point in time, we're still at, what is the bank rate right now? 5%. It's been kept at that level right now. Now, with inflation obviously, core inflation is an issue for us. And inflation in November, December is forecast to go up to 2.5%. Now, we're expecting to see interest rates drop by another, 0.5% by the end of this year. We could argue that, okay, we might be on track for that happening. We might not be on track for that happening, but make no mistake, the Monetary Policy Committee who makes the decision as to whether or not the Bank of England base rate should be reduced in November and December, will be monitoring this situation very, very closely. It's suffice to say that if we see any kind of uptick in the cost of energy to the point where it becomes significant and becomes inflationary, interest rates are going to be going up at some point to be able to compensate, unless the economists, the monetary policy committee, the guys at the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, decide, okay, maybe we just need to hold our nerve a little bit. I've said it on previous videos. I don't think we'll start to see any kind of interest rate hike until we start getting to the levels of 3.5% plus, because at that point they would have to move. But make no mistake, conflict in the Middle East makes this conversation a really important one, and it muddies the waters of some of the financial decisions or monetary decisions that they would likely be making. The next thing that connects onto this will be mortgage rates. Now, in the UK, we've had historically low interest rates, right? We had 1.5%, 2% interest rates. People are now remortgaging, going on to 3, 4, 5% mortgage rates. There's still circa 600,000 homes in the UK. By the end of this year, we're going to have to remortgage onto higher interest rates. The average household in the UK is going to see their mortgage increase by about £500 per month. That's not a small amount of money to go and find. And at this juncture, we're at this point where interest rates seem to be on the precipice of coming down. If things were to escalate in the Middle East, the fear is with monetary policy changing, interest rates going up, mortgage rates are going to go up even further as well. And that is a legitimate concern for people. Now, I've already mentioned energy prices because we saw the energy price cap increase yesterday. Who wants to pay more for energy? Look, I remember when for our house here, we were paying something like 60 quid a month. At the moment, we're paying £178 a month. With the energy price cap increase yesterday, I don't know what that's going to be. It's probably going to increase to, I don't know, 190, maybe £200 per month. I think we've all had it up to here with energy prices right now. And, this is alongside mortgage payments increasing, energy prices increasing, food, just putting money in your car. These things are all connected. So I think we're in for a difficult ride. If things don't dissipate, if things don't de-escalate, if it goes to further escalation where we get into a full-blown conflict in the Middle East, we are going to feel the pain here in the UK, at home, in our households. And it almost feels like a platitude for me to say what I always say: control the controllables, make sure you're on point when it comes to your personal finances. In times like this, investing in the global markets also doesn't seem like a bad idea as well, because yes, global markets, and let's talk about that for the moment, you'll see more volatility in global markets. However, things like stocks for arms companies, those kind of stocks will do extremely well in those kind of instances. What will tend to happen in times of conflict is, whilst there's going to be volatility, a lot of people will put money into safe havens like gold and precious metals. Those will do extremely well. So even from an investing point of view, conflict presents opportunities. But at the same time, I'm always very, very mindful that, like I said at the beginning of this, I don't want to be crass. I don't want to talk about this in a nonchalant way, because at the end of the day, people lose lives in conflicts like this. And to talk about investing and making money, and that feels a little bit dirty, but it is one of those things that is an opportunity if you so wish to do so. I think moving forward, control the controllables. That goes without saying. But this is one that we're going to have to monitor, because if this does escalate, we'll see this come through in our everyday lives here in the UK, as far removed as we are. I would love to know what your thoughts are if you've been following this conflict, and what you think might actually happen. But I thought this was a worthwhile discussion to have today. It's a little different to what we normally talk about, but it's still money related nonetheless, so worthwhile mentioning. But yeah, let me know what you think. Are you hopeful that things will de-escalate, or do you think it's just going to go full out? There's a lot of people. My parents were very, very religious, and if you're a Christian, you read the Book of Revelations. Many people will say that this is the Book of Revelations. It's always been written in the book for a very long time. There will be a conflict of this size, and it It sows seeds and is a sign of the end. I don't know if you're religious. I'm not particularly religious, but I do remember that. And I remember people talking about how it would actually play out. And I'm seeing a lot of people bring that up on social media now. I don't know. Superstition, religion, I don't know. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section down below. But thanks so much for watching. If you've not already subscribed, please subscribe. And if you did see value in what we've spoken about here, you have a perspective that you want to share, and you thought, yeah, this was a good watch, please make sure that you smash the like button as well. It will help with the YouTube algorithm. Till next time, catch you later on. Cheers.